When the Americans were ready for their hippies movement, it was the time in China the Great Cultural Revolution political campaign started. It was replicated in other parts of the world, such as in Japan, where college students were becoming somewhat a little bit violent on campus against the authorities. And the college students in Torino, Milano, and Paris also took it to the street and to protest. But what happened in China, where this Cultural Revolution was originated? It was a period of so-called red horror, actually positively promoted. And I actually had my own eyewitness experience of that. Back then, the teenagers in their between 13, 14, and probably 17, 18, they patrolled the streets and stormed into the households where they got the information those families came from the bad background. Either they were rich or they were powerful at the time before the communist regime. In my own neighborhood, there was this lady in her early 90s. She was dragged out by a bunch of kids in their 13, 14 year of age, and they whipped her. She was crying, screaming, crawling on the floor. And what I had to see behind the door, because I didn't want people to find me watching from behind the door, that stayed here to the day. My father was taken away and locked away for a while. We couldn't see him. And one day, my mother told me and my sister that we were allowed to go visit him where he was locked up. So we went, and right on the gate of the complex where he was, I saw this brand new slogans written in the black ink with the red cross over the name of my father, and which was associated with the political words of down with, which was seen everywhere in China. And for a 7-year-old kid, that was always associated with the bad guys, until now I saw it becoming associated with my own father. So we were led into a little dark room where later my father did not shave, with the messy hair, escorted by 2 big guys into the room, stood right in front of me. And I stared at him confused. Was he a bad guy? And he looked at me and put his hands on my forehead, and he did not know what to say. I had no idea if he knew what I was thinking, but apparently that slogan put out there was to make sure that we got to see it. This was the scene, stayed here forever to the day I leave this world. That was Cultural Revolution for me. Now, because I did not have the school for a couple of years, and because of our family background was among the 5 categories of the bad people, my parents did not want me to go out there and play with other kids, because if I opened up my mouth, I could get everybody in trouble, including myself. And that happened all the time. So I had all the time in the world, and I was reading a lot of books, At the time, I've never even heard of library. That was a foreign concept back then to me. So basically, I just borrowed from everybody, and that was the way back then, the circulation among the individuals. So I read a lot of books, and I was doing at least minimum 6 hours of sketch every day. I went into elementary school at the beginning of the Great Cultural Revolution, political campaign, and 10 years later, I left the high school at the end of this Cultural Revolution. I thought that things were getting better for me, and at the year that I turned 18, my sculpture artwork was sent to the National Art Museum to participate in the National Art Exhibition. I was fortunate enough to have my artwork pass through the 3 rounds of reviews by the panels of experts. And sure enough, I saw in my own eyes that my sculpture artwork was placed on the 2nd floor within the National Art Museum. Imagine the excitement for 18-year-old back then. So I came home and gave the tickets to my sister and asked her to go see this great event happening in my personal life. And she came back and told me, you know what? I didn't see your artwork and I don't know what happened. And I couldn't believe that. So I went back to the administrative office of the National Art Museum in Beijing and questioned what happened. And then they look at me funny and they're like, go back to your own school and you will get an answer. So I went back to my school and the answer I got was this. We just have to be honest. What do you mean by that? What is the part that you have to be honest? Well, what your grandfather was, what your father said and did. And that's the historical truth we need to present to the government. And so we did. Whatever they did with that is not up to us. So that for me was the Great Cultural Revolution. And that is going to stay with me forever.